Benjamin Goessling joins 9 to noon now. He covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune, for he is a scribe. And at Ben Goessling is where you follow him, like 9 to noon does, if you would be so kind, via Twitter. And Nordo, with today being CPD, colonoscopy prep day.
Yeah.
And the first two pills taken at noon. Vikings practice 2:30.
Right.
So Ben Goessling, he's my brother. I mentioned to him, the situation that's transpiring. I'm thinking about going to practice today. He was like, "Stay away from me, man."
Yeah, correct.
I mean, are you really discouraging me from like going out there and memorizing numbers and body types and taking in one-on-ones? And good morning.
Good morning. I think there just may be days to do that you might find more enjoyable than this one, given the state you may find yourself in. And this is not having had one of these yet. I'm still a few years away from it. I'm at the point where when people talk about it, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's coming pretty soon. But I've heard enough stories about it that it would seem like discretion is the better part of valor, and trying to keep yourself in the closer proximity to a bathroom may be a better play today.
I'm worried that at some point today, you're going to be 50 yards
That's the thing.
from elite inside intel.
And then Chorus won't let me run through the Vikings locker room to get to the closest bathroom.
You're going to be 50 yards from elite intel. You're going to be 50 yards from a bathroom, and you're going to have to make a choice.
Yep.
And I don't know for sure if you're going to make the right one.
Right. How do you do it? It's with the scribes or with the .coms or with those, who are covering the team. And, specifically, I go to the beat writers, those who are there every single day, every single press conference, specifically this time of the year. But I was looking at you yesterday through the binoculars a little bit, and I think you were right next to the bottom of the stands where there might have been 8 inches of shade.
That's the spot.
But how do you do it? How do you stand out in the sun as long as you do? And then you just craft these unbelievable Caleb Evans stories, and like Mark Craig wrote about the Indian Ocean saltwater thing.
Yeah.
How do you guys do it, man?
Well, a lot of it becomes. There's sort of this. You hear beat writers get talked about as kind of the boots on the ground, and there is a little bit of that where you just have to have a lot of endurance. There is certainly. I think my long-suffering distance runner mentality plays in a little bit here.
So you run marathons to prep for Vikes Training Camp.
Well,
I always love
sometimes they're about as long. Standing out in that practice is about as long as it takes me to run a marathon. Other people would take longer to run marathons, but that's a cheap shot. In general, it does become just kind of this. There's a grind element to it, certainly, where you go through every day and you have to say, okay, what other stuff do I have to ask about? What other stuff do I want to write about? The Caleb Evans thing yesterday, it was kind of interesting. I had planned to talk to him anyway because Brian Flores talked quite a bit about the defensive backs, and he got talking about what he had done to get better through the offseason. And he said, well, I really needed to understand the game better. And he really needed to do a better job of looking at my own technique, how defenses should work, how offenses are trying to attack me. And he said, I got a film coach. And okay, that's kind of interesting. And he starts describing the guy.
Yeah.
And he said, Cody something. And I'm thinking, there's only one Cody I know of, at least in the Twitter world. And that's not real life necessarily, but that fits this description. So I asked him, is it Cody Alexander?
Yeah.
And he goes, no, I don't think that was who it was. But then we started talking a little more, and he said, yeah, he's with Match Quarters. And that's definitely Cody.
I think I met the guy at the Combine.
Cody?
Yeah.
Cody is incredibly sharp.
I think he was at the Cronin private party that she had first night.
Yeah, he is. I think he was at the Senior Bowl, too. He actually said he met Brian Flores down there, and they talked a little bit, and Flores came away saying, boy, this guy knows his stuff.
Wow.
Because he had done a couple of things last year for his site, kind of looking at the Flores defense and all of the different blitz packages and kind of all the hot coverages they're playing, kind of the stuff they adopted from Pat Narduzzi at Pitt and playing all these zones that nobody really had tried in the NFL. And so he had put in quite a bit of work on the Vikings defense on his own. anyway, even before getting together with Caleb Evans. But Ron Slavin, Caleb Evans' agent, is also based down in Dallas, so they've connected a little bit. Ron and Cody have, and Ron said to Caleb, hey, this guy would be helpful for you. So he said, yeah, let's get together. And they ended up watching the entire Vikings season defensively, I think twice all the way through.
Like together?
Yes, on Zoom.
Oh,
I think
sweet.
they got together pretty regularly on Zoom, went through all of the Vikings tape, went through tape of corners that he liked and wanted to imitate, some of the best in the biz, and then looking at offenses, kind of saying, hey, here are the trends that you need to watch out for because this is what teams are running. So it was a pretty thorough thing.
All right.
And talking to Cody yesterday, a lot of it was saying, okay, how can I help you without kind of going over the top of Brian Flores or Durante Jones or, people that are trying to tell you a certain technique. I don't want to contradict. I don't want to usurp. I don't want to undermine in any way whatsoever. I just want to be an extension of what they're doing. So it seemed like a pretty cool arrangement, and we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, it was interesting to hear about that yesterday.
If you're the Cody Alexander cat and you're a stock, buy it now. I mean, seriously, if coaches are signing off on you watching film with their players, and usurp was the perfect word, you're not going to alter, tweak,
ask for the playbook. That was another kind of guardrail he set. Like, I'm not asking for the playbook.
Or usurp what's being taught by super well-respected Brian Flores. I mean, I don't know if he does this with other players, but
this was the first one he's doing, at least in the NFL level. He's working with a couple of college people, but this is the most one he's done in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, what a wonderful idea for a side piece or a career. Again, but you got to get these coaches to sign off on it.
Yes, and that was the part. And he was a grad assistant at Baylor. He's coached at Texas. He's been around this enough to know that coaches are going to probably have some misgivings about this, or at least some trepidation about it, at least at first, because you can get a lot of people on social media that say, hey, I'm watching film, I'm breaking this down, and they may be completely wrong. Right. And they just say it enough, they say it frequently enough that it looks like they're right, and they build a brand, but coaches say, no, this isn't the right thing. So, number one, knowing what you're talking about enough for a coach to be like, yes, this is going to be helpful and not counterproductive. And number two, to do it in a way that doesn't seem like you're trying to trade off somebody's name. He certainly understands the tension there, and I don't know that this is like a business he's looking to build for himself, but it was interesting to hear kind of how he would go about it, because I think having been in the coaching world like he has, he understood some of the things you'd have to navigate there, some of the dynamics that are in play, and saying, how do I do this in a way that helps and doesn't hurt? Was interesting to hear him kind of try to manage that.
But see, I don't know enough about the between the ears portion of the equation with a Caleb. Like what's being taught, what's he doing well during the course of practice. Then all of a sudden, it's not just a Caleb, but it's some players will freeze during games. Yeah. And, whether you're watching receiver and seeing it, or whether we're seeing it in the games that I call and you cover, he seems to be the one who's pointing most at other people, or people are pointing at him, or they're pointing at spots like, I thought you were supposed to be
here.
Yeah. I just wonder how this film watching piece, meshes with that, the scholarly approach to the position.
Yeah, I think his perspective, he said this yesterday, and this is in the piece a little bit. He said, I've relied on my athletic ability so much that I probably haven't done the work to get to the right spot or to know where I need to be. And this is one of the things I've heard Harrison Smith talk about over the years, is that being able to cover all of the space on the field is great. But if you get to a point where you understand, here's where I need to be, you don't have to do as much running, because you're not taking 3 steps to the right before realizing you have to go back to the left, or even 1 step, which sometimes can make the difference in the NFL between being in the right spot or being a step late. So some of it is trying to marry his athletic ability with just knowing, okay, this is what they're running. This is the concept. This means I'm going to need to be here. And then if you're there on time and you use your length and athletic ability from there, his hope is that leads to a more productive outcome overall.
Now, it was interesting to note, and I guess I didn't notice this, but I read it via one of Ben's tweets, at Ben Goessling via Twitter. Please follow. That Flores says new corner Bobby McCain will start out at safety and might get some work at outside corner. So I initially read that like, wow, Flores is really excited about this whole Kwesi signing here, right? So excited he's going to take the corner and move him to safety. But then you read farther into it, and McCain's played multiple positions. But it's still, I mean, the Vikings are very strong at safety, in my estimation.
Yeah, I would agree.
You got Hitman nearing the end, scholar of the game, still good. Metellus on the fast track.
Yep.
Bynum's good. Everybody's all over Jay Ward for how much he's jumped up.
Who also played corner yesterday.
Well, Theo Jackson would start for teams in the NFL.
Yep.
So I mean, why? I mean, McCain safety, why?
Well, I mean, they need depth at the position overall. We haven't seen Lewis Seen the last couple of days. I don't know that Lewis Seen is very much like in their thinking in terms of being at the top of the list right now. But
they're moving Ward to corner, aren't they?
Well, yeah. I mean, he played there a little bit yesterday. It certainly seems like that's a possibility that becomes the thing. Because I've looked at it thinking, man, I think this is not some special insight. You can look at the roster and say this, that they need help at corner certainly more than they needed at safety. So that's the one. Yeah. When they cut John Parker Romo yesterday and they make the move, you're thinking, okay, this is probably going to be for another corner, because O'Connell had said it, I think Saturday, that, well, we need more help, probably going to need more help at corner. So I'm kind of figuring the next move is going to be for a corner. And Bobby McCain he's played corner. He's been a nickel corner. I think he could be some of that. I mean, Brian Flores said you might see him matched up on guys. Mm-hmm. But he said he's going to start at safety. So that may mean that we see a lot more of Jay Ward at corner. I think that's certainly something to watch over the next few days here, because they need help at corner. They probably see a role, or maybe a special teams role as well for McCain. That's a lot of what he did last year. But the piece of McCain coming in and then Ward moving to corner, I think those things may be connected.
Now, with and you've discussed it, perhaps written about it or tweeted about it, but we have seen it a fair amount, that Brian Flores, in a preferred world, in the Flores preferred defensive world, he wants his corners to play man.
Yes.
Which for the low-hanging fruit Donatel jabs or barbs that I'll hear or read.
Yeah.
One thing that I'll come back to is, okay, people wanted him to blitz a lot more because he wasn't blitzing, but I don't really want to put Cam Dantzler out there on a solo island. With all due respect to Duke Shelley, that's kind of the same thing, you know? Well, is that the case here, where Rush meshing with the corners and he wants to play more man? Griffin's not practicing.
Right.
Murphy and man, I mean, I ain't going to pretend to know how good he is or bad he is in man, but is like with these injuries and the sad Kyrie Jackson news, is that approach changing?
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch. And he did say yesterday, you don't want to be like all of one thing and none of the other thing. I mean, that's certainly going to be a piece of the Brian Flores approach, is you're going to have different looks and different packages. But I think the thing with man is typically you can bring more pressure easily in man than you can in zone when you have to cover everything. And their approach last year with some of the coverages they played was, we're just not going to cover every zone. We know that if we're going to bring this much pressure, in some cases, we're not going to be able to cover every open zone on the field, and we're going to bet on that we know the places we need to cover and that we can get home fast enough that we're not going to get burned by it. But so that, I think, will still be in the tool bag as well. When they want to bring pressure, they can say, we can still play some zone behind it like we did last year. But I think the overall hope is you can play more man. Now, that requires more of your corners.
Right.
You have to follow guys across the field. You have to be able to flip your hips. You have to be able to probably get physical at the line. And we've seen them go out and try to get bigger corners like a Shaq Griffin to do that. But I think man works best when you have stud corners that you can say, okay, Darrelle Revis, you got this guy everywhere he goes. We're good. We don't need to worry about it. Kind of like a left tackle where you can just forget about him.
Zimmer used to do that with Rhodes.
Yep.
And I mean, the others would make plays.
Yes. And you could do that with that group, I think, more so than you can with this one. So it is, I think, one of those things to continue to watch, because when they've talked about we want to play more man, that was the assumption is Mekhi Blackmon is here, and they were excited about where he was going. Shaq Griffin is part of it. Byron Murphy is part of it. And every time the Kyrie Jackson piece of this comes up, I kind of preface it by saying this is not the most important component of what happened with Kyrie Jackson. The loss of a life is exponentially more significant than anything that happens on a football team. However, they did plan this offseason to have him in the mix, knowing he's a guy that they're excited about, a guy that can be physical with receivers, a guy that fits into what they wanted to do. So there is that component of, hey, this was something we planned on, and there's still going to be a football season, so we have to adjust to it. So as callous as that may seem, there is that piece of this whole thing, and it does kind of compound with Blackman, Griffin, all of these things to say we were expecting our corners to look one way, and right now, at least, it looks a little bit different than that.
If you had to bet Turner or Grenard, and say it's a 50-50, it's a 110 both ways, leading the team in sacks, which one would you take and why?
I think I would take Grenard simply because I expect he's going to be on the field probably more. I mean, I think he's going to be kind of the primary pass rusher, that Danielle Hunter type of you're going after the quarterback almost all of the time. And Dallas Turner is going to do a lot of that as well. I just don't know if the snap count will be quite as high for Turner right away, especially if Andrew Van Ginkel is healthy and they're kind of mixing in Turner. But there's a lot of looks, and we've seen plenty of them in camp already, where they have three rushers on the field together. So Dallas Turner is certainly going to get his opportunities. I think I would say Grenard, just because I expect, sacks are a counting stat, and if you have more opportunities to get there, you're probably going to have a better chance with a higher number. But Dallas Turner's been impressive, and I think he's certainly going to make an impact. It would not stun me if he's competing for that lead in sacks, especially he gets a bigger role and plays well enough early to justify more work as the season continues.
Does it in your estimation, does it behoove Kevin O'Connell and the Minnesota Vikings 11 days from now in the first preseason game? Las Vegas Raiders are here middle of the afternoon. Does it behoove him to play Sam Darnold, A, and B, how long?
It's going to be interesting to watch how they handle the quarterbacks. And I think a little bit when you ask that question, because they have, to this point, we have not seen the number ones play a single snap under Kevin O'Connell in the preseason. Like, Kirk Cousins did not play a preseason snap the last 2 years because he was the number one guy and they didn't have any interest in exposing him to the potential of injury.
Yeah,
so
it's the Rams way.
Yeah, it definitely is the Rams way. And you see a lot of teams do this going forward. I would expect that Darnold probably doesn't play much in that first game, if at all, because I think the dates they have circled are those 2 days in Cleveland where they get those joint practices with the Browns against a good defense, and you can control the work a little bit better. My question is, I would think we'll see a lot of J.J. McCarthy in the preseason. I don't see a reason not to do that because that's probably going to be the best chance you get to look at him for a while. I am a little bit curious if they will mitigate any of that with him just because of the injury thing, knowing that, hey, this is the guy that we see as the long-term answer. Or do you say, you know what, you're a rookie and we want to see you get some work, especially if you're not going to start the season, so we're going to play you a lot. I'm very interested to see how they go about that. If I had to guess on Darnold, I think he doesn't play the first one. We'll see. I think if the joint practices come in, he probably doesn't play that second one either, which then leaves the third one. So maybe he gets a little bit of work in the first one, if anything. But I think they will be overall pretty cautious with the ones again. Yeah. The McCarthy piece of this is, I think, going to be really interesting to watch as well.
I love how you laid that out, because if you do use Darnold in what is, it's billed as game speed.
Sure.
Which it is. It's game speed. I mean, it's an actual game, but it's a preseason game.
It's better than practice.
But there will be no Darisaw. There will be no Bradbury. There will be no Brian O'Neill.
There will be no Justin Jefferson.
Right. Now, Addison, I wonder if they'll make Jordan play in this game.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, is now you start to establish the line of delineation between a guy you probably will start against the Giants, playing in an actual game wearing your colors, but not playing with the guys with whom you'll play in New Jersey. Yeah. So then, like, if things go poorly, well, that's when you get the sneaky background. He didn't have the right guys around him. If things go well, what do you think of us now? What do you think of us now?
Yeah, I think that's a great point because, you kind of think about it. If the rest of those guys aren't going to play, and I can't imagine they will, then it's like, what's the point?
Right.
Because it does kind of put you in a weird spot where
Brandell might need to play.
Yeah, there'll probably be a few that will, and I think we saw a little bit of that last year too, where it's the guys that are either first-year starters or kind of on the bubble that play, but there's no reason to put Darisaw out there. There's no reason to put O'Neal out there. Aaron Jones, I can't imagine, is playing.
What about Ingram?
I could see that he would, especially with Dalton Reisner sitting there playing more right guard in practice. I think there's still an evaluation that's happening there. I could see that one, but as a whole, if Darnold is out there throwing to your Brandon Powells and your
Lucky Jackson, though,
some of those types. There's
Thayer Thomas on the 9.
There's value, I guess, in that, but it's not the guys he's going to be playing with on September 8th. So, it almost seems like why put him on the field and risk anything happening? Because the other thing is if something does happen to him, your whole plan for J.J. McCarthy is easier to manage the more healthy quarterbacks you have in front of him. The Sam Darnold, Nick Mullins firewall that allows you to say, we want to take our time with J.J. McCarthy only works if those guys are healthy enough to be out there every week. Right. So I wonder if that'll enter into the thinking too.
And I'm, maybe it's just Jaron Hall gets cut. I mean, but I'm still machinating on what's going to happen to Jaron Hall. Not like I'm obsessing over it, but they have 4. If
July 30th, it's fair game.
But if I need to bet this thing and hit the trifecta, I go Darnold into Mullins into McCarthy, and they're all active. It's a favorite trifecta, perhaps. Jaron was drafted. Jaron is untapped. I don't think anybody around the league can. I mean, Kellen Mond was awful, and subsequently has been on 2 teams since he left here. At least 2 teams. So you cut Hall, he's picked up in a second. I wonder if they think about that.
Yeah, that is a question, but what are you going to do? I mean, are you going to keep 4 on the active roster? No. I can't imagine they would say that. I mean, I don't see how they would. I think what they try to do is get him through to the practice squad in hopes that he doesn't go claimed on waivers, but you do have to take that risk. I just don't see a way to do it otherwise because you have to keep those 3 on the active roster, Darnold, Mullins, McCarthy, and then even if you because they typically wouldn't want to keep 3. I mean, just for roster construction, if you can avoid your third quarterback being on the roster, especially the way the rules are now, that helps you out. They don't have that option right now.
Well, sure they do. They can cut Mullins and Hall and make JJ the backup.
They could. That is an option. That's like the one scenario if you are really bent on doing that, that they could do. But then you have McCarthy one snap away, and I'll say this, if they did that or if they traded Mullins or something like that, it means that they're so comfortable and confident in McCarthy that, hey, if he had to go in, we're ready for that to happen. I just think short of that or short of them kind of saying, we want this to happen on our terms, no ifs, ands, or buts, I think Mullins is on the roster. So then that does make it a little more difficult. The rest of the 53 spots to say, how are we going to construct this thing if we already have 3 quarterbacks? That's why I don't think 4 is even in the cards whatsoever.
Did you start covering the team in 2012?
Yes.
Okay. So you like exciting preseason moments. Okay, just quick twitch. College Stadium. Too much time for Teddy, Arizona, the wide receiver Rodney Smith or whatever his name was. Like Teddy Bridgewater just making memories at TCF Bank Stadium at that time. Well, that was exciting as a preseason game would go. However, tell me what you think of this. 11 days from now, a week from Saturday, I think it's 3:00 for Vikings and Raiders at U.S. Bank Stadium.
Star Tribune Saturday deadlines. Get excited.
It's the only home preseason game. If J.J. McCarthy runs out as the starting quarterback, well, there will be a level of excitement within the building.
Yep.
Probably the most excitement to begin a game at home in the preseason since 2009 when Childress wheeled out Brett Favre in the 3rd preseason game against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
And defensive coordinator Gunther Cunningham for the Kansas City Chiefs, seriously, I don't know if their ones were supposed to play that much, but they did. And he just kind of had the feel, from what I understand, of like, look, we know it's preseason.
Yeah.
You ain't going to roll this guy out. He gets there 48 hours ago. Now he's just going to come out and play. I mean, he zero blitzed him nearly every single play. Kavika Pittman blitzed up the middle between in the A gap and hit Brett Favre as hard as he's ever been hit in his life. He said that.
Yeah.
But it was exciting in Metrodome when Favre came out to play. Place went nuts, man.
Yeah.
So if I just think McCarthy starting in your only home preseason game and playing the first half.
Give the fans something to get excited about.
Quarter and a half. Let's put Jaron in, and then let's let Nick get the rest. It just sounds right.
It does. I agree with that. I think it certainly would, especially with, like you say, when you only have the one, it may be fans' only chance to see him, at least for, the first part of the season.
Or a year.
Possibly a year. I think that would be their ideal scenario, is that the only chance you would see him is in that game. So, yeah, I think it would be a nice moment for the fans. I think people would get charged up about it. It certainly would give you a chance to say, hey, this is what the future looks like, especially if you feel good about him and you can kind of make a statement of this is going to be fine. I mean, it's preseason football. You can't read too much into it, but people would get excited if he comes out and hits a couple of, deep posts and
how about if he runs for 40 and he runs like the wind?
Yeah. If he's doing that and you're on the mic yelling touchdown,
come on,
and the place is going nuts.
Yeah, we don't yell touchdown in the preseason.
You wouldn't for that?
No.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit.
Okay. Well, and you're on TV too, so you gotta play it. You gotta play a little different.
It's TV. McCarthy, 20. Oh! And then Abbott complains that nobody understood on radio. And that's okay.
Yeah, I suppose it's got to be a little more the Pat Summerall approach, where you leave some space, the Joe Buck approach, where you leave a little more space.
That'd be fun if they do that.
Yeah, I agree.
That's Ben Goessling, covers the Vikings for the Star Tribune, at Ben Goessling via Twitter. And we have some more Vikings training camp conversation, which does include J.J. McCarthy and him peppering what to some would be an unlikely source, trying to figure out how to get better. And that's next.
Good stuff.
9 to noon.
Pretty sure I saw this via Ben Goessling's Twitter. So McCarthy peppers defensive coordinator Brian Flores with questions on how he can improve.
Yep.
Now, the rookie's not the first in the history of the NFL to talk to the guy who's trying to beat him. Or the guy who sees him on film while looking at his other guys.
My guess is he's not the first Michigan product to talk to Brian Flores either.
Oh, wow.
I would assume that there's a quarterback in New England that probably is looking for an edge that may have done that a time or two.
But this further plays into the layering of things that are impressing me with J.J. McCarthy.
Yep.
Like that Friday press conference he had where he was talking about, and I didn't know this, about, it's IMG Academy, right?
Yep.
He's at a boarding school.
Yep.
Pandemic hits. Can't leave.
Yeah.
He's there with no family or friends, and he fell into a hole.
Yeah.
And, he was talking about how he got himself out of that. And, so that was interesting, the way he pulled himself out. Secondly, if you were to bet McCarthy would not start week number 1, and he just seems really comfortable understanding his lot in life.
Yes.
And the go-to example, I didn't mention a name yesterday, but that not every first round pick rolls onto a team and is accepting like Trey Waynes. Like Trey was quiet in the first place.
Yep.
And, what Diggs did during that rookie camp should be felonious in 48 states.
Yeah.
And that might have played into the equation, but Trey barely played that year on defense.
Yep.
But see, the serendipity of it that the young man, I don't think, saw at the time was he became a really good tackling corner.
Yeah, he did.
By playing on special teams.
Yeah.
So then maybe he was cool with it. But like McCarthy, it's whether it's privately or low-key publicly, you can just tell he's super comfortable and feels blessed and respectful of the opportunity, whatever it is.
Yeah.
He's just an impressive young man.
Yeah, there's a level of situational and social awareness there that for a 21-year-old is awfully impressive. I don't think I had that when I was 21. Even things, just talking to people behind the scenes of, you are trying to figure out when he's going to be the guy, and you're kind of trying to read tea leaves in terms of how much they're going to put him out there in terms of, press conferences and public appearances and all this kind of stuff. And the vibe you get is that he is the one saying, hey, if I'm out here doing a lot of this stuff, it sends the message that I'm the guy. And I know that right now I'm not the guy. So I don't want everybody else kind of pulling that cart ahead of the horse and getting to the point where everybody says, okay, it looks like, take all these signals. J.J. McCarthy's doing this, J.J. McCarthy's doing that. And he is going to do press conferences, which you don't see from a lot of number 3 quarterbacks. So the Vikings understand there is a unique interest in him there. But I do think a lot of the reason that it's been fairly quiet, independent of that with him, is that he knows everybody reads these signals. I can remember, this is a little bit of an aside, but it kind of makes the point. 2017, Case Keenum, the entire season when Mike Zimmer did not name him the starting quarterback, he did not talk at the podium on a Wednesday. No. Why? Because the starting quarterback talks at a podium. Yep. He talked Thursdays at a mini podium in the Winter Park locker room. And everybody knew he was a starter. He was going to be the starter every week, but that sort of platform that the starting quarterback gets placed on by just being designated as the talker at the press conference on a Wednesday carries a meaning with it. Yep. And I think J.J. McCarthy realizes that. So just some of those things, it's just like he gets the whole dynamic of it, and I think is doing his part to say, let's kind of just respect where things are at and enjoy the moment and not try to upset any of the team dynamics and the social dynamics as a result of that.
All right. So, with what the media can see, certain OTAs, minicamp, now we're into training camp, and all training camp is open for the media, at least the first 90% of it, 85%, and packed house yesterday too. Yeah. Was Saturday packed?
It was, I would say 3/4.
Okay.
It was hot.
Yeah.
So I think that plays into it. Yeah.
That sucker was packed yesterday. So therefore it's a small sample size, but I pulled this tweet from what learned football minds are saying about this part of the equation. At Vikings Central had a tweet yesterday. From my little birdie at camp today, J.J. McCarthy once again looks like the best quarterback at TCO. Played mistake-free football for the most part and was decisive. Do you see it that way?
I thought, was efficient yesterday. He took a lot of especially in the 2-minute drill at the end, he takes a lot of the underneath throws and didn't seem to force the ball. I think I would treat all of this with a little bit of a grain of salt because they are not putting all of these guys in the same situations. It's not good on good all the time. He's getting a lot of reps with the 3s, and there are certainly going to be times where he gets with the 1s or gets with the 2s against the number 1 defense, and we're all going to go, oh, he's playing here, he's playing there. They don't structure everything as like this constantly moving ladder where you are, hey, you did well on this rep, so we're going to move you up here. And it's not this horse race as much as we all kind of like to make it that way, those who are watching from the outside. So I think I would couch some of what I've seen from him with that, knowing that they are not evaluating it quite that way. That said, I do think he's been more efficient. I think he's done a better job of making throws into traffic when he's had to do it. I think he's made smart decisions. I think his footwork looks better than what we've seen.
Right.
There's certainly good signs of progress. I just don't think that they are looking at this as, hey, this guy's in stall 1, this guy's in stall 2, this guy's in stall 3, open the gates and we're going to ring the bell and see who's the first one to the finish line. I don't think they're structuring it quite that way. So I don't know that I would read it that way as a fan attending or a media member covering it.
And lastly, Ben Goessling, at Ben Goessling via Twitter. All you guys, but Seifert started it with the tweeting yesterday about the kickoff. I mean, it's just providing anxiety. The NFL just looks so it's so confused.
Yeah.
With no, you can't put the ball on the tee that way. We may have a 12th man. Whatever that's stupid.
Yeah.
I don't even understand I still don't understand it.
It's like playing pickleball with my parents. There's so many extra rules. That was for you, Dad. He always like, when do I get a shutout? Like, there you go.
Dad.
There's your shutout. Goolmeister.
Yeah, Dad, you can go overhand with the serve just like John McEnroe, but everybody else has to bounce it. And then the third out of bounds bit, if you straddle the 20, you're stuck. It's just stuck right there. I mean, seriously, I joked earlier that you may need to find returners who are elite shortstop minds from their past to field the worm burners, field them properly, and do something with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just like in the opening kickoff of the preseason, I just might be quiet, just like watch it so I can learn with everybody else.
Yes, I'm kind of with you. I continue to wonder, when are we going to see more of this in practice? Because we haven't seen it yet.
The NFL has to have some type of media confab, doesn't it, with like the kickoff or something?
Yeah, I mean, typically, so they talked about this at the owners' meetings. They kind of just gave a brief overview of it. And ordinarily, when the refs come in, like the day that the refs come in to meet with the teams, they typically set up a thing for the beat writers where the refs kind of go over the rules of emphasis and, the new points. And it's typically something about here's where you can't hit. Here's a new area that you can't hit a player, which is generally the thing every year. I would think the kickoff would be the big point of intrigue this year. So, yes, I hope that when the refs come through, and that's typically kind of mid-August. Maybe it's a little earlier than that with the preseason schedule being what it is, but I am very curious to get more of a walkthrough on this because, there are so many components of it, especially as they officiate it, and I hope they don't over-officiate it, which the NFL has a tendency to do. There's a lot to figure out with this thing, and I don't know quite how you do it other than either kind of going through all of the rules or just walking through it and making mistakes and kind of ironing things out from there.
Right. You're late. I'll do my best to see you out there today, and I won't stand by you in case there needs to be a sprint given the complexity of the day. Thank you for your time as usual, and I look forward to seeing you.
Yes, Godspeed with your trek through the next 24 hours.
Thank you. It ain't going to be great. Ben Goessling at Ben Goessling via Twitter. News du Nord is next.
Welcome back, 9 to noon. It is News du Nord time, and that is brought to you by the Casino at Canterbury Park. CanterburyPark.com. Live racing in play right now, so you can get to the website for the live racing schedule, or you can just show up and feel the felt. They got poker, blackjack, and table games going on 24 hours a day, all freaking year long, having some sips at Chips. Tomorrow, Derek Allen is working, so make sure you stop into Chips and tip the kid well. We'll start off News du Nord with the Minnesota Twins. They lose 15-2 last night to the Mets. And it was, there was so much potential in that game. I think it was Buxton in the first inning, top of the first. He singles in Manny Margot. You get the 1-0 lead. Well, then it was a sixer in the fourth for Simeon Woods Richardson. Then it was, I think it's Stomont, 5 in the sixth inning. And then it was Brock Stewart allowing 4 in the seventh. But don't worry, Mr. Jeffers did homer in the ninth to make it 15-2. It was an absolute bludgeoning, and all things considered, 162 games. I heard Rocco some post-game audio. Yeah, that's not us, and it should be better today. And it's going to be better with Mr. Festa on the mound versus Minaya, and we're all watching that trade deadline PA. 5 p.m. is the trade deadline, but Twins baseball, a tough one. Big news. How about this, PA?
Yeah.
You're going to be able to watch the Minnesota Twins on Comcast.
Really?
I believe Wake Up, it's the first of the month.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that.
So there are...
I mentioned yesterday, I mentioned it yesterday, and I don't even know if it was public knowledge, but there was a big court situation yesterday with Bally's. So it probably was public knowledge. And that was rubber meeting road. And that could have gotten into the NHL, too, from what I understand. So I'm glad to hear it went the right way. We also mentioned yesterday, whether it's from Francisco Lindor through Brandon Nimmo and Jeff McNeil, the Mets hit. And they hit very, very well. They're hot. I mean, their bats are so hot right now, ma'am. If you look back over like the last 7, 15, and say 23 days, these Mets are swinging it sweetly. And if you make mistakes, like happened last night on several occasions, they will put double digits up on you. So the Mets got some sweet bats, man.
They do. I don't have all the particulars. You strike me as a guy that has the most expensive cable package with Comcast. Is that accurate? It's like the ultimate, like you got all the sports channels and everything, save for Bally's right now.
Yeah, I got all the sports channels.
But you got like the ACC network. I mean, you're just loving Clemson hoops in the middle of the winter.
I have the SEC channel, which I never watch.
But I would suggest cable subscribers, what I was getting at is in terms of particulars and which package you have.
Yeah.
I don't have that in front of me. There was some ambiguity around that.
Yeah.
But in the end, Twins fans that have been waiting patiently,
that's great.
You're going to get paid off. And you didn't even have to watch the 15-2 drubbing yesterday. So in some ways, you should say thank you.
Yeah.
But that should be as of August 1st, so just later this week. The Twins are back on TV. I did see something, too, wondering kind of, okay, so they get paid. Now it's not on the TV screens. Team's pretty good, though. Has some stars. As of now, even despite yesterday, certainly in the mix playoffs-wise. Mm-hmm. I had heard something yesterday that their attendance actually, they have seen numbers-wise a little bit of a drop-off. And so
a drop-off?
Yes, correct.
Geez, I would have gone 1% the other way.
And so how much that plays into the lack of TV, people just finding other things to do over the course of the summer, out of sight, out of mind. It does sound like in some ways the Twins have paid a price for that, which goes into now as the trade deadline is upon us. You heard it from Derek Falvey a day or two ago, kind of the idea we're not going to be, we're in a spot right now. Hamstrung was a word that was used. Bobby Nightingale for the Strib reported on it, that effectively if they're not putting salary out the door, that they're not going to be bringing salaries in the door.
Yeah.
So you might not want to wait with too bated a breath as the trade deadline hits us at 5 p.m. today. Only two teams, I believe, over the last month have made 0 transactions.
Wow.
The Twins and the A's.
Wow.
The Twins and the Athletics.
What an elite nugget that is, because
that was a Gleeman nugget. Gleeman's, he's we're still waiting. The chair's open. Love Gleeman. He's still on X providing elite intel.
Yeah, he's for sure. He's an elite baseball mind. But there are big names that are moving, like Rosarena from Tampa Bay went up to Softy's team. Jazz Chisholm, who's really good for the Marlins, well, he's now with the New York Yankees. He's cranking 2 home runs on Sunday Night Baseball. So, the rich, those of the rich get richer variety, they're adding those fat names, man, trying to become relevant in September.
Yeah, I think there's a Jack Flaherty for the Tigers. Yeah. And he's a member of and that staff. The team's not doing well this year, but the pitching staff has been pretty badass for the Tigers.
They got a couple of nice ones.
And he's a name that's out there. I don't know if he's moving at all, but nothing on the home front for our baseball team, at least as of this moment.
I don't know anything about the Detroit Tigers minor league system. All right, so they may have 6 Max Scherzers and 2 Steven Strasburgs and a Drew Soren on the side. But if you have a Skubal, Tariq, and you have Flaherty, you have a chance with a 1-2. You have a chance with a 1-2 to maybe find a 3 in your system or something and start there as the comeback takes place.
Yeah, but the problem for them is that if they can't win a 1-0 game, how are you going to get those 7-8 ones over the finish line?
Mm-hmm.
I saw this yesterday, a clip via Chase Daniel. And Daniel is singular, by the way.
Yeah.
Chase Daniel, former quarterback of the Saints. I believe he was a Mizzou Tiger. I believe he also played for the Bears 5 or 6 years ago when the Vikings lost at Soldier Field to Chase Daniel.
Yeah.
But he was on an athletic podcast, Diana Rossini in the mix with Kirk Cousins. And I found this audio interesting, saying that Kevin O'Connell said, if we re-sign you, it's highly unlikely we'll draft another quarterback. Here's the audio.
You're a franchise player, bro. Like, it makes no sense whatsoever to do 1-year deals.
I think the reality is just that they wanted to give themselves that flexibility. And I remember Kevin's words, which I'm not going to hold him to them, were, hey, if we sign you back, I would think it's very unlikely that we would draft somebody. It was something to that effect. But I also know in the league things change. So even if he says that, it's not like I'm going to, hold him to that. But his approach was, I just don't see us doing that if you're back. If you're not back, then we have to.
Well, that was Kirk with Chase Daniel on an athletic podcast. Overall, longer and good conversation. Diana Rossini was in that mix as well. I was always under the impression that they were open, upfront, and honest about him. I can simultaneously agree if you're looking at the 1-year contract bit and more guarantees down the road. We know Atlanta gave him ultimately as much as he wanted. But I was always under the impression that this was kind of the plan, that if Kirk's back, if Kirk's not back, we were going to go top 10. But that's what Kirk said O'Connell told him. It's highly unlikely they draft a quarterback.
Well, with Cousins assumedly in the mix, let's say it was a 50-50 equation, like when I was out in California and you were back here, and that's when it popped. Up to that time, when you were selecting where the Vikings were selecting, the 9 to noon narrative was if you have, let's say, a handful, all the right people seem to like. Mm-hmm. You know how facilities are. We ain't going to be around 12 again. We ain't going to be around 12 again.
Right.
That made sense that this would be the time.
You got to get one.
To go get one with or without Kirk. So there's ambiguity there. And it's still just, it's not humorous. It's just strange that Cousins was driving to Mercedes-Benz Stadium for an Atlanta Falcons draft party. And he heard on the radio that they drafted Michael Penix Jr.
That's awful.
I mean, that's just so strange when it happens
somebody
like
from
that.
PR's in the parking lot, like they got a couple of jerseys for him to sign. They're waiting. They got some chains they're going to put on him and trot him out in front of the fan base. Yeah. And, he's going to, you like that. They had all the bits planned. Yeah. And he's just sitting there. Maybe he's driving in the conversion van at that particular moment. And radio's a little fuzzy. He's got to hit it a couple of times for it to clear up, gets a phone call, and finds out that they drafted Penix. What a moment for Kirk. Best of luck down in Atlanta. That's news to Nord. I was going to ask you maybe, actually real quick, 30 seconds. I know we got Softy. I saw Jordan Addison doing the punt return bits. What's up with that? It's day after day after day. He's in the mix, PA.
Yeah, I mentioned that yesterday from something that I had seen, and I don't know how serious they are with it, but if you're in the punt return mix, it inherently means you are catching footballs that are soaring high through the air. But the same thing that happens with kickoffs.
Okay.
They're up to something. I don't know what they're up to with this. Addison returning kicks, Brandon Powell returning kicks, Kene Wanwu returning kicks. But yeah, I didn't notice that yesterday. So now it's happened repeatedly, which means they're not just doing it to see if Jordan can eyeball footballs high in the air coming down at him at a high rate of speed. So that's a nice catch right there.
News to Nord brought to you by the casino at Canterbury Park.
Softy KJR, friend discussing a foe, is around the corner on KFAN.